Hi, everyone. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone, and I'm here with Dee Peers, who is the host of Around the World with Dee and Friends.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for coming, Dee. We just finished what I think is a very good show on the Middle East. So I think you may want to look at the video from that show. The regional changes that are taking place there are quite interesting. A lot of the changes are centered on Syria, and the show we just did. You might like to search that out, okay, and take a look. This show continues a series we've been doing for some time now. It's called How Will People in the U.S. React to the End of Neoliberalism, Part 6. Why did we start this series? Because some people have been talking about the end of neoliberalism in the United States. And there was a particular article by Robert Kuttner, in particular from the American Prospect, which said that he thought that neoliberalism as a philosophy was no longer vital and had lost its power to persuade, and that its reign as a vital ideology was ending. He didn't use exactly those words to express that, but that's what he meant. He had been at a meeting a few weeks back, and everybody seemed to be agreed that as a set of ideas to empower behavior in politics, that neoliberalism was over. But Kuttner also thought that there would be a long way to go before we could overcome the influence of neoliberalism in politics. And that's not so far-fetched point of view. Hi, Lana. Lana says, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday indeed. That's not so far-fetched when you consider that personnel, okay, is policy. And that if you appoint personnel who are neoliberals, they still may do the same old thing out of habit or just because they don't know how to do anything else. Hi, Steve. Good to see you. Jeff Denton, it's great to see you as well. Thank you for coming. So that then brings us back to the problem of how do we change politics? And I'm about to add Gregory Mallard to the screen. Hi, Greg.
Oh, great. Hi, Greg.
Howdy.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
We're doing pretty wonderful too.
Well, that's good.
And we are sort of going to concentrate this show on the politics of getting rid of neoliberalism again. We talked about that last week.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think the conversation was all over.
Yeah, I considered that because there's always going to be something else that we can add to the conversation. And there's always going to be new things to discuss, new things to add to the whole conversation. It's never going to be a done deal because we're always going to be talking about this from here on out, especially throughout the rest of my lifetime, at least.
I
And
don't
that's
know
one
if
thing.
it'll be through the rest of your lifetime, because if we can get the neoliberals out of politics,
Mhm.
then maybe the ideas, okay, of neoliberalism will also go bye-bye. I hope so. I mean,
Well, the number
I
one
hope you
thing
don't.
is
I hope you don't have to live with it for your whole life, Greg.
it's going to have to also start with dumping the corruption in politics. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
how you're going to get rid of neoliberalism in politics. You've got to dump the corruption. You've got to make those who take any form of corporate money toxic in nature. And that's where getting rid of neoliberalism is going to come into play. We've got to do all that we can to get rid of neoliberalism, and that means dumping the corruption.
Well, you're
That's
not
going to
going to
be
find any disagreement from me about that.
I didn't think you would disagree with me about that, because that's one thing I've been saying this whole time, that in order to in order to get rid of the neoliberalism, you've got to root out the corruption. Well, you've got to get in people who aren't going to take the big money, who's going to hold those accountable. And something I was thinking about today is, if I'd gotten elected as a member of Congress, so that way
Okay, Greg, we're having a little trouble with your sound.
Breaking up.
Yeah, it's going in and out.
here.
Okay, would you like to go out and come back in? Sometimes that fixes it. Okay, so I wanted to comment on what Greg started to say. Okay, and that was that, simply to point out how the donor money maintains neoliberalism. Because even if its ideas are completely bankrupt, the donors, who are extremely rich, can express to the office holders what they want them to do. And if what they want them to do is the same old neoliberal things, they're going to keep on doing the same old neoliberal things. Even if the ideas are bankrupt, if the ideas continue to make these extreme profits for the donors, we will never get out of the grip, okay, of neoliberalism. So, of course, we do have to attend, okay, to dump the corruption. But that raises some other issues. Some of you may have saw me over the last 2 weeks strongly supporting the resurgence of the Medicare for All movement among the Red Berets. As you all know, I'm a Red Beret in good standing, and I always support what they do. Here's Greg again.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. That was on my end.
Okay,
But
that was fine.
yeah, as I was saying before, if I were elected a member of Congress, and if we were going to really dump out the neoliberalism, it would take forcing a floor vote on something like Medicare for all, That and those who vote against it, then that would mean we would publish a list of dumping the corruption by dumping those very incumbents.
But how can you force a floor vote, okay, on Medicare for all if you don't have control over the leadership?
Just don't vote in the leadership, like that. Don't do like what the squad did and blindly vote for Hakeem Jeffries.
And before Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi.
Yep.
They could have gotten rid of Nancy Pelosi in 2021 if they stuck together.
Mm-hmm.
And all 6 of them voted the same way. That's all they needed.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. And we've had a lot of grief because they didn't. So that's important.
Yeah.
One issue that I started to bring up while you were out was the idea that certain movements are once again starting up, like the Red Berets movement, okay, for Medicare for All. That's being propelled by the appearance or the soon to appear movie, Healing Us. Okay, the documentary that was made by Kenny Ballantyne, okay, and Maddie Purvis, okay, and a number of the Red Berets and other very well-known people. Dr. Joe Jarvis, of course, was very prominent in that. And the narrator of the movie is Susan Sarandon. And there were many well-known people in it. And it is a very beautiful movie. I did an interview with them about a week and a half ago, I guess it was. It was a 2-hour interview. And it was really a great experience. Yeah, Steve, I know you sent me a friend request, and thank you very much. As soon as this is over, I'll be happy to accept it. So, okay, this interview got a lot of support from the Red Berets on Twitter, and a lot of people, who were associated with the Red Berets, and there's an awful lot of enthusiasm about starting to pressure once again, both at the national level, okay, and the state levels. It's also true that on May 16th, new versions of the Medicare for All bills, both in the House and in the Senate, are slated to be introduced into both of those bodies. The premiere of Healing Us is going to be on May 19th. So there's an awful lot of effort on the part of many people to tie those things together and to burgeon the movement for Medicare for All once again.
And we've got to get true champions of Medicare for All elected, people that will actually stick by it instead of just letting it go.
Right, but it's very hard to tell who those true champions are because, of course, those true champions are going to have to be people who won't be taking any of the big money. Dr. Joe, before you sign off, can I call in? Yeah, you certainly can call in. Okay, I will certainly take your call. In fact, Lana, if you'd like to actually get onto the program, I can send you a StreamYard link and you can come in. So let me know if you want to do that. Okay, but if you just want to keep it to a call, that's okay. I can do that. Okay, so that means we somehow have to dump the corruption and the Medicare for All movement together. That's very functional for the single payer movement at the state level, because we can use dump the corruption to defeat certain people at the state level who have been blocking the single payer bills. So there's a way to tie those two things together, and to do it in such a way that we get out some or very many of the personnel in state legislatures and also in Congress who have been operating as though they are neoliberals, supporting the donors in terms of what the donors want to do. And of course, the donors are all neoliberal partisans. So I'm trying to figure out how that's going to go. And I'm trying to figure out how we can heat up the dump the corruption movement so we can start to have an influence on all these campaigns and really be a factor in 2024. Obviously, that's going to be vital if we want to end the operational aspect of neoliberalism. So Dolores,
Yes.
have you got any suggestions or any ideas on heating things up?
Well, as you know, we're doing these different programs. We're trying to heat things up. And, creating different memes and creating different shorts. And then also people just getting out there active in their community.
I'm going to be heating it up here soon on TikTok.
Oh, that's going to help.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you got to think, if you utilize TikTok, you can also get in touch with many of the Gen Z voters. And that's the population that needs to really be targeted, because the overwhelming majority of Gen Z, they want student loan debt forgiveness. They want a federal job guarantee. They want Medicare for all, and so forth.
Yeah, there was something very interesting that happened on student debt. I refer to it as debt elimination as opposed to forgiveness, because I don't think the student loan people did anything wrong by taking student loans. Okay, but anyway, there was a bit of news today on that. It had to do with the legal aspects of it. Let me see if I can bring it up. Yeah, it was in Truth Out. Let me see if I can bring the damn thing up here.
Yeah, and we also have to explain to the people that student loan debt forgiveness is actually elimination is in fact a bailout for the middle class, and how much money it would add to the GDP over the next decade.
There was an article in Truth Out by Sharon Zhang. The headline is Report, Central Legal Case Against Student Debt Relief, quote, is, quote, fundamentally false. A new analysis finds evidence that the case should never have been accepted by the Supreme Court. It's a short article.
Yeah, there's a lot of those cases like that the Supreme Court needs to stay out of.
Yes, but this was a situation where, I'm just going to read a paragraph or two. The central theory of standing for Biden versus Nebraska, the case brought by 6 Republican state attorneys general, including Missouri's, to strike down Biden's student debt forgiveness plan, relies on the unproven claim that the state's student loan server, Mohila, would not be able to pay its share into the state treasury, something it hasn't been able to do for 15 years, if the plan took effect. So that, of course, seems silly because it hasn't been able to do it for 15 years anyway. But so that claim seems like an empty claim. But the argument, which a majority of the Supreme Court appears to favor, boils down to a claim that Mohila's finances would be negatively impacted. But a new bombshell report by the Debt Collective and the Roosevelt Institute finds that Mohila wouldn't be financially harmed by student debt relief, and that its revenue would actually soar to record heights as a result of cancellation. Okay, now I don't want to read this whole thing, but the argument is very solid. The authors of the report but came up with a financial analysis, and they say they conservatively estimate that Mohila would make $167 million in the first year after cancellation, which is an increase of 88% from its 2022 revenue. And then, if true, the report's findings eliminate standing, or the basis for one's ability to argue a case in front of the court, for the Republican officials' claims against student debt relief. So that's a very important finding. It implies that the Supreme Court justices should not have taken up the case to begin with, and that the case for standing is even weaker than previously considered, if not completely baseless. The article also says even if the findings by the Roosevelt Institute and Debt Collective weren't entirely accurate, and there were no similar calculations to rebut them, experts say that it is absurd that the Supreme Court would have taken up the case without any proof of standing from the plaintiffs. Okay, that's about the gist of it. Now, whether the report will in any way change the decision of the justices, in other words, some of the justices might take up the report, maybe for the justices, and say that the state didn't have standing because Mohila wouldn't have a problem, that would result in throwing the case out if a fifth justice would come over to that side. Well, of course, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I thought that piece of news was significant from the standpoint of whether Biden would be ruled to have the authority to forgive the student debts that he tried to forgive.
Yeah, I've been seeing where a lot of people were angry because $10,000 or on upwards to $20,000 wasn't enough.
Oh yeah, I was angry about that too. I know it wasn't enough. Of course, it wasn't enough. And
It was far from
the Biden
enough.
administration used the wrong justification in the first place. It should have been much more straightforward and just said the Education Act gives me the authority to do this, and I'm doing it. And then it would have been up to the court to try to attack the legality of the Education Act itself.
Yeah, because they work on behalf of Citizens United. And that's one thing we're going to have to tackle as well, is overturning Citizens United.
Well, that can't be overturned unless we pack the court,
which Biden is refusing to do.
which Biden is refusing to do. But if the Democrats decided, well, we're going to do it anyway, and there was a push for it, they wouldn't be able to pass it now because
They don't have control of the House.
they don't have control of the House. So the earliest they could possibly pass anything would be in 2025. And meanwhile, the student debts are back in force, and this court seems bent on deciding not to allow even the paltry amounts that were being forgiven by the Biden administration. But maybe this new information about the Mohila group and the fact that it's likely to be able to make all these payments, that it's supposed to make, maybe that will change some minds on the court. I don't know. But anyway, going on, or going further, I completely agree with you. We have to get to Gen Z. And that is very, very important. Gen Z has to embrace the arguments for dump the corruption we put forward. If they do embrace it, these arguments will start to spread to other generations, as well. If we can get hot with Gen Z. How do you propose we do that, Greg?
It's going to have to take going on to social networking platforms where they are mainly at, like TikTok, for example. Yes. So it's going to take, I can go on TikTok. I'm going to be creating a new account on there called Revolution Evolution here soon. And I'm going to be doing a lot of political stuff on there as Revolution Evolution. And I think that's going to be a good outlet to reach out to voters and all that, to get them to see that taking the big money in politics is wrong. Maybe you can actually, maybe if I utilized it and started doing live streams, because the requirements to go live is 1,000 followers. Let's say I start doing live streams on there, I could take and have like, whenever my computer does get fixed, I can have my TikTok pointing at the StreamYard, and we can be holding these discussions even on there.
Okay. How long would it take for us to get 1,000 followers on TikTok?
I would have to really be pumping out videos nonstop to get to 1,000 followers. Like, I could probably have 1,000 followers within a month or two.
But you have to pump out very short videos, though, right?
Yes. You can also upload up to 5-minute long videos.
I can upload yours and then share you out on, on my YouTube, and then also onto Twitter and just getting you out, and people will know it, even though I'm sharing it, but it's your TikTok.
Yeah, what I would do is I would take
where it's coming from. Follow you.
I would take the video from after it's uploaded and upload it even to like Facebook in a reel, as well as what else? YouTube. I'll put that on the Revolution Evolution YouTube channel as well to build that up. But I don't know the requirement even for a YouTube short.
YouTube short? Well, the YouTube short is just a minute, say 60 seconds. But still, you can still have even if you're over and you have, say, a 2-minute TikTok, or, then that just shows up as a video.
Yeah, it would. I could post it, like take the link as well and post it over to Twitter. And I can also do Instagram reels. Like, there's all sorts of things you can do to get viral.
People get to know your
Because,
name.
yeah, and get my name out there. And I'm sure we could probably get a lot of support even from some conservatives who do support Trump, because there are a lot of Trump supporters, whether we know it or not, that would support dumping the corruption. They are against corruption in politics. They want to remove the corporate money in politics because they see it as the number one threat to our society.
So they agree with us on that.
Yes.
So that's very good.
Yeah, it would. And the thing is with the Democrats, and what they need to stop doing is they need to spend far less time attacking Trump and the Republican Party and actually stick to policy and stick to the actual issues that matter the most to the American public.
Of course they do.
And the more time they spend attacking Trump, they spend and all that, and the like as Joe Biden likes to call them, the MAGA Republicans, he would actually get a lot more support. But he's even turning away a lot of independents just by doing that.
Yes, I know. Okay, so TikTok is one idea. Perhaps the two of us need to get TikTok accounts also, Dee.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
you
have a
would have to
TikTok.
have a smartphone.
I have a TikTok account in my name. I could do around. I think I need the around the world account, but I do have a TikTok account because I download from TikTok and I will upload it onto my YouTube channel, some stuff, because since the name is around the world, I try to bring in some stuff from around the world from people on TikTok.
Okay.
And the only thing
Okay,
you have to
so
watch
I
out
have,
for is music. Is music that you don't get copyrighted claims for YouTube. But
Yeah, I could take and do a live stream right now and be playing normal music and not even get a copyright claim.
really, why?
They don't have the copyright claims on TikTok.
no, TikTok doesn't. But when I transfer from TikTok and try to upload from TikTok over onto YouTube, that's when, if there's something playing music on TikTok,
Okay, so
I could get a.
I would be able to play. Can you hear the people sing on TikTok?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, I love that.
Like, if I were to go live on TikTok right now, I could take and turn on my music on my radio and play country music that I like listening to. Which I might take here soon, and after I get a big enough following even over on TikTok, and just transfer all my lives over to there and hold meaningful civil debates, even with the Trump supporters of TikTok, even with I don't know about the Biden supporters, on the other hand, because they're lost friggin' cause.
How long are the TikTok videos?
You could do up to a 5-minute long video, but with a live stream, you can do it for up to 12 hours. I was part of a 24-hour live stream on there one time.
Part of a 24-hour live stream on TikTok?
Yeah. We were live hopping. We jumped and we were doing live jumping that day.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah, Bonnie says people think Firestone is rich, so we have to be careful.
Well, because it's the Firestone tires. But yeah, we need to get we do seriously need to get to back to the conversation at hand. We do need, since the millennials and Gen Z combined make up the largest voting bloc in our country, and we have all these neoliberal types who are attacking Gen Z, who are attacking millennials for not turning out to vote, and they need to understand, if they were not running candidates like Joe Biden,
They could
Donald
turn out
Trump,
to vote.
they could turn out the vote. It's nothing against your generation at all. It's just that my generation feels that anybody over the age of 65 does not need to be running again. That's just how my generation feels, that they've been in office for far too long. And I'm still in my mindset a libertarian thinker on a lot of like foreign policy and also some domestic policy, especially term limits for politicians. I still hold a few of my libertarian viewpoints because I am a former libertarian, mind you. Before I was a leftist, I was a libertarian.
If no one was taking any big money, though, why would you have to have term limits?
Well, the reason why I would support term limits is because I don't feel somebody should be elected in office for no more than 12 years. That's just how I feel.
Okay, well, 12 years is 6 terms, so that's quite substantial.
Well, the reason why I say 12 years is because that's 2 terms for a U.S. senator, and 6 for a member of Congress. But in the Philippines, and this is what I've discovered, they have term limits where nobody can serve no more. The president and the national legislature, they cannot serve no more than 6 years.
Okay, I have another question. How does our emphasis on dump the corruption fit with the campaign of RFK?
Well, with RFK, we would have to see where his donors are. We need to see who's funding his campaign. Like if he's taking any sort of big money, no, there's no way I would support him. But he has actually come out with a lot of stuff that I actually like and that I actually agree with him on.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Like I like him, you know. Don't get me wrong, I used to love Bernie. I still love him and I still respect him. But what really turned me off with Bernie was how he just come right out of the door this go round automatically endorsing Joe Biden.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
So I like RFK a lot more than I ever did Bernie. And what really made me happy today to see was how he come, and this is what Lana was saying a little earlier ago, and how he would automatically pardon Julian Assange.
Yes, I saw that too. And I was very, very happy to see that. And of course, that is consistent with his positions on free speech and free press. Mm-hmm. So he's only being consistent with what he's been advocating in those ideas. And the consistency pleased me. And of course, just saying that he was going to drop the prosecutions, I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, we need, and that also goes in hand with dump the corruption as well.
Yes,
and that's defending the First Amendment and the Constitution. And that's one thing you've got to look at if somebody says they're going to honor the Constitution, which is what I would be focused on as well with dump the corruption, is you've got to have people elected who is willing to honor the Constitution, stand up for the Constitution, and with what RFK is doing, supports the First Amendment, which is the right to free press, with pardoning Julian Assange. That would be a really good thing around the world. And this would go with what Around the World with Dee and Friends is about, as well as the pardoning of Julian Assange. That would protect media freedom around the world.
Yeah, that wouldn't be all that you would have to do to protect it around the world. I think there have to be tough laws passed here that actually protect it. But
I would even go a step further to also pardoning Edward Snowden.
yeah, I would do that too. And
Reality winner,
yeah, I would pardon them all.
I would
just,
pardon them all.
yeah, they were really courageous whistleblowers, and they exposed the wrongdoing by the government. And I think the government has to have that kind of check.
Yeah, there does need to be whistleblower protections acts.
Real whistleblower protection acts.
Covered under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Yes.
Because whistleblowers, whether you know it or not, they are part of the free press and the media. So they should be covered and protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But that's just the constitutionalist in me speaking. And if these politicians cannot honor and stand by the Constitution of the U.S. that they are sworn to uphold, preserve, protect, and defend, then we don't need them in office. I mean, look at how these neoliberals, how it's Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution for their donors, but we the people never get a bailout.
I understand completely, Greg, and I entirely agree. Okay, as well. I think that most people forget Article 1, Section 8, and the power of the government to create the money of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to make people alive to that, okay, for a while.
Yeah, it was you who actually woke me up to that in like late 2015, early 2016.
Oh, really? That was Article 1, Section 8. Yeah.
I literally thought you were out of your mind. I was like, what the hell is this dude talking about?
Yeah, what's this dude talking about? Yeah, that's a really important thing, Article 1, Section 8, knowing what it says. There are a lot of really important things, like, for example, okay, there was an article that appeared today also about someone suggesting the first year after cancellation, which is an increase of 88. But someone suggesting that Janet Yellen should be sued.
She should be out of her position. What is she? She's the Treasury Secretary, isn't she?
She is the Secretary, okay, of the Treasury.
And we need to get rid of Jerome Powell too, because
right. But
what he has done,
getting rid of people now. We're in the middle of a debt ceiling crisis, and what this guy was suggesting was that the way to solve the debt ceiling crisis is to sue Janet Yellen to get her to just simply keep on paying the bills. And the argument was that anyone holding bonds, anyone holding Treasury securities should have standing to sue her, because if she refuses to do anything about the debt ceiling crisis, but allows the country to simply default, that then someone holding a bond would be directly damaged and would have standing to sue Janet Yellen. Okay, I agree with that argument, but I would extend it even further. Specifically, what I would say is we know, okay, right now that if the Republicans don't do anything and there's no settlement with the Democrats, that the state of the economy is going to be threatened. Okay, it's likely it's going to bump us into a recession. Now, for someone who's a bondholder, the government may not be able to pay off the bond or pay off the interest on June 1st, when June 1st arrives. Okay, but for a regular person like you and I, we might not be able to get our payments from the government that are due under the law because the default has occurred. So that should mean also that we have standing to sue Janet Yellen. Now, what remedy should we ask from Janet Yellen? Well, the coin law says that the Secretary of the Treasury has the authority to mint 1 ounce platinum coins and to specify what the denomination of the platinum coin should be. So
$100 trillion.
$100 trillion, $200 trillion, $1 trillion, $5 trillion, whatever. Someone should sue her specifying a remedy that's going to get rid of debt ceiling crises forever.
Rohan Gray, this is your chance.
No, I'm the one who wrote the book about the platinum coin, not Rowan Gray. He hasn't come out with his book yet. Okay,
Yeah.
My book is out for 10 years already, since 2013. So please respect that. I worked hard on that book. Okay, anyway.
Where can I find that book, by the way?
You can find it on Amazon. Okay, it's an Amazon Kindle book.
Oh, cool. I'm getting it now.
Okay, if you give me your email address, I will gift you a copy of the book, Greg, and you won't have to buy it.
Cool.
Okay, I'll give you a copy of the 2014 edition, which is the revised edition. It's revised and expanded. It has a very long appendix with a number of different things that the administration can do to head off a debt ceiling crisis. So I'll send you that version if you send me your email address.
But yeah, we've got to mint this coin so that way it prevents any debt crisis. Well, we don't have a debt crisis because we're a currency issuer. Yeah. I'll laugh at.
We do have not a debt ceiling crisis, but we have a political crisis in which we're subject to terrorism by those who believe that the national debt is really a problem. The $100 trillion coin gets rid of the terrorism because it shows that we can pay off the whole debt as it falls due and do all kinds of deficit spending as well. And the $100
Medicare for all,
trillion
student loan debt
coin
elimination,
facilitates all of that.
and the $100 trillion coin is also the kryptonite to neoliberalism.
I think it is too. Okay,
It
I've
is
always thought
automatic kryptonite to economic neoliberalism.
yeah, I've always thought that, and though I didn't use the term kryptonite, that's one of the things I say at the end of my book.
I believe it was Rocco Million who said that it would be the kryptonite to ending neoliberalism.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, Rocco. Yeah, my friend Rocco said that. Okay. Okay, let's turn to some of the comments now because we have some interesting comments.
But yeah,
Steve
minting that $100 trillion coin would easily be the kryptonite to ending neoliberalism as we know it.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think it would be because the weapon of neoliberalism in blocking all the good legislation that we want to pass has been them constantly saying that we got to pay down the debt. We can't afford that. We don't know how to pay for it. And it's all been all that crap. With $100 trillion sitting there in the Treasury General account, they can't say that anymore. So, yeah, it's the kryptonite. And that's why it's the kryptonite.
And they're scared of people like us getting elected into office, because that's one thing I would be advocating for in Congress if I were elected, is to mint the damn coin.
Yeah, but of course, minting the damn coin is up to the president. Of course, Congress could send a mandate. Well, it's not really up to the president, it's up to the Secretary of the Treasury. So Congress could legislate a mandate for the Secretary of Treasury to mint a $100 trillion coin and deposit it at the Federal Reserve. That could be done. Yes. Steve Wilbrand said, Sabby's burning down the house. Go watch after this. Thank you, Steve. Lana says, hi, Jeff, Steve, D, and all. And also Lana says, Sabby was fab talking about RFKJ and how Iowa and New Hampshire plan to defy orders from the DNC and hold their primaries as they have for years. I love it. I saw that clip this morning, and I thought it was really very entertaining. And I'm just looking forward to all that happening.
Yeah, did you hear where the DNC does not want Joe Biden to debate Marianne Williamson or RFK?
Yes. In fact, the DNC announced it was canceling the debates in the primary. Okay, which I
think what would be cool is if these independent networks, like maybe Sabby Sabs or somebody, or even one of them, had a debate with Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr., regardless of what the DNC says.
Oh, I think so too. Okay, and I think there might be many takers, but
I think Fox News would also jump on that as well. Fox News.
But this decision of the DNC is very ill-considered, because if Biden cannot survive the Democratic debates where people are comparatively friendly to each other, there's no way he's going to survive a further debate with Donald Trump. I mean, they can forget that. And
they're also talking about him not wanting him to debate Donald Trump.
They can't get away with that. In other words, there's going to be such pressure to have the debates. Those debates are an institution. You can't simply say, I'm not going to debate, okay, and get away with it. If you do that, you're just going to lose the election.
And they're trying to sit there. And I saw a video the other night on TikTok where this one liberal idiot who's obviously paid off by the DNC via Paulette management was trying to sit there, who's anti-debate, who is trying to argue up and down that if Joe Biden were to debate RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, it would be it would spell out disaster for Democrats in 2024 elections, general elections against Trump. And I'm like, what the hell are they thinking?
Okay,
Like
I think they have to adjust to the reality.
that's just,
Increasingly, Biden is going to be running along with a fragile economy because the Federal Reserve has made the economy very, very fragile at this point. That's the first point. Okay. The second point is that Biden's foreign policy is a disaster. And in another year and a half, everybody is going to know that it's a disaster. That it was a disaster. And they're not going to be happy about that. It's much better for the Democratic Party if they jettison Joe Biden right now.
and if they did the same treatment toward Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg as well.
I completely agree. In the most recent poll, that Echo poll, where RFK has jumped up to 39%, Joe Biden was at 43%, Donald Trump was at 39%, and Kamala Harris was at 39%. So RFK has already caught in popularity Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris. And
Marianne Williamson
Joe
should
Biden.
serve as RFK's vice president.
I don't know, but usually the vice presidential choice is up to the nominee. So that's going to depend on what RFK thinks about her. And we have no idea about that at this point. So Steve tells me he sent me a friend request. And as I said, I'll accept that as soon as this is over. Lana says, Steve, it's such a pain reinventing the Facebook friend list, which Lana had to do because her account was hacked.
Yeah,
Lana,
I remember that.
has anyone heard from Lisa? Lisa was back on Twitter today. She didn't say anything directly, but she was retweeting lots of tweets from the Red Berets. I was happy to see that, but I know what she's doing there. She has taken a break from Twitter, and she's just keeping her account up. Like every 2 or 3 weeks, she comes on for a day, and she retweets a lot of stuff, and then she drops off again.
Must be like taking. I think if it's that case, I think she's more or less focusing on her mental health and all that. Like that could be a scenario to play into.
Okay, well,
I don't want to speculate too much.
Okay, I'm pretty close to Lisa. Okay, and I can generally tell you what the situation is. Okay, she had some problems, health problems with her son, this year.
I'm sending love and healing vibes their way.
Which was screwing up his academic standing in high school and might have had very long-term damaging effects on him. So Lisa had to get out of the Pittsburgh school system and Pittsburgh itself. Now, due to certain things that had happened in that family, she had a place to go in Cincinnati. And she had to work hard to get her son into an elite school in Cincinnati, a very good school. And she's also had to work to solve certain other legal problems to make sure that he didn't have any disabilities. Okay, so she's had to work very, very hard on that, to work with lawyers and real estate agents, to work to set up her house for sale. Her house, okay, is on the market, okay, at this point. She's also running between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati to get them all set up, okay, in Cincinnati. And of course, they're looking for houses there. As well, she has some health problems, okay, in her extended family as well. She's had those are turning for the better, but she still got her hands full with the move to Cincinnati. So basically, she got off social media and all the political activities that she was involved in order to handle these problems, okay, at home. Now, she's been very successful in handling all of that so far. In other words, she and her husband have been very successful, okay, at doing that. And it looks like the move to Cincinnati is going to be a big success for her, or at least that was the way things stood the last time I talked to her.
Yeah, she hasn't been on live with us since we started the whole dump the corruption stuff.
Well, she was there for the first of the Dump the Corruption streams. And then a little bit after that, she ran out of time. In other words, the burdens that were due to the illness of her son and the academic problems that were associated with that began to occupy her time with school authorities, her time with lawyers, and her time to get him well as well. He is well now. Okay, so that's worked out very well for her. So that's where she is, and that's why she's not here. Okay. I have to say, I don't know if she's going to come back, because that's going to depend on how well her life in Cincinnati would be consistent with coming back to the previous activities that she was engaged in. Of course, I'm hoping that she is eventually going to come back. But I think if I had to estimate, I'd say that it's going to be another 3 to 6 months before she feels sufficiently free to do anything like this again.
Well, we always have the door open for her.
I certainly do have the door open for her. She is still part of my StreamYard team. You know, on StreamYard, we have teams.
Oh, yeah. I know on my StreamYard, Dee is on mine. That's how you're able, whenever I get reset up again, that's how you're able to get in my stream without me having to worry about it.
Oh, that'll
Yeah, you always pop on mine too.
What I'm talking about is these official teams on StreamYard. If you include somebody in the team, then yes, they could easily come on and stream on your channel. Okay, on my channel, there are 2 members of my team, myself, okay, and Lisa. And so she is still a member, and she can come back anytime she wants and stream.
Greg's in mine. And Brandy,
of course
I know, because I'd go there and on just before a show to get ready and stuff. And who do I see who's already in there? Greg.
Okay, so Lana wanted to know if she could call in before I sign off. So Lana, this sounds like a good time.
Yeah, Lana, come on in.
Okay, Robert, minor surgery on Tuesday, and M4A Minnesota meeting yesterday. Lots to talk about.
I'm going to have to ask my friend. I have a friend that's an activist who's from Minnesota.
Oh, wait, that might be Lana now. Let me
I'm going to talk with my friend to see how that worked, because there's a lot of, like, I hope if
Hi, Lana.
states do,
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you. You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay. I'm gonna have to turn my TV down though, or else we're gonna have feedback. Hold on.
Okay, great.
we don't want a copyright strike over here.
So I wanted anyone else who was interested to hear what your one of the tidbits that you said to me yesterday as I was trying to go out the door to this Minnesota Medicare for All meeting that I had yesterday with Gina, Dave Garibaldi, and another gentleman named Greg, who is very, very high up in the Minnesota Democratic DFL, they call it. So,
Yeah, Democratic Farmer Labor Party.
right, it's the weirdo that it has the weirdo label in the Democratic Party, Minnesota. But anyway, the reason that I wanted to ask you about the funds, like what the fiscal space was, I wanted to be able to take that information back with me to the meeting. So I felt that was a very important bit of information. But one of the things you said was, I think, extremely important. And you said there was absolutely no reason for Bernie to be presenting this bill with extra taxes because, and this is the part that I didn't understand until you made it really clear, is that the federal government is already have expenditures for the medical stuff at $2.5 trillion, I think you said, per year. They don't need any more taxes from anybody. All they have to do is move it. Like it would just be moved. It's not on what they're already doing.
Yes, it was $2.5 trillion, if I recall the article correctly. But there's some new news on that front
Okay.
that I just heard about but today. The former president of PNHP, one of the former presidents, okay, his name is Adam Gaffney, published a report with David Himmelstein and Steffi Woolhandler, in which they took the financial analysis that was presented in the 2017 article of Steffi Woolhandler and Himmelstein, and they went back in time, and they were concerned to show that the percentage of national health expenditures that was actually being covered by the federal government in some way, shape, or form, what they wanted to do was to measure that over time, starting a very long time ago. I skimmed the article. I didn't have a chance to read it, but they actually investigated this from the early 1900s, when the federal government was spending 6% of national health expenditures, and they took it through 2020. And what they found out is that something like 68% of national health expenditures is now covered by the federal government. This is a formal report. It's very carefully worked out. The three did a very good job as far as I can see from skimming it. It's going to be an influential report.
Any way I can get you to send that to me?
Easy. I can send that to you when we finish this.
And then
Okay, I
carbon copy Dave, if you would, the same gentleman that sent the Minnesota healthcare bill to you. Thank you. And then the other thing that I wanted to make sure I said to you before I hang up is that Dean Phillips, we know, is my Minnesota rep, Minnesota CDC rep. Now, he's been very resistant to Medicare for All on the Fed side.
Oh, I know. He's a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus.
Yes. Well, had an idea because Greg was going to go talk to him yesterday. Greg left our meeting and went to talk to him. Right? They had a private meeting set up.
Right.
And Dave said, maybe you should mention that. What the heck was that guy's name? For the guy from Canada, Tommy something or other, that was the hero of Canada for helping set up their healthcare program. He's dead.
Yes, Tommy Douglas.
Douglas, yes.
What his name, and he is something like the uncle of Donald Sutherland, very close relative. Okay, of Donald Sutherland.
Also a socialist. Yeah.
Okay, and of Kiefer Sutherland. Yes, he was a socialist. And he was the one who introduced a Medicare for All program in Saskatchewan, which was the first province to get it up in Canada.
And they still revere him very, very much. They really do.
Yes, they consider him in national polls. He is considered the greatest Canadian who ever lived.
And so what Dave was saying to Greg, and I don't know what Greg actually said when he got there, he gave us a small report on the way back. But Dave said, maybe you should mention that, like, hey, be the hero. They'll remember your name forever if you're the first man out on this, And so Greg actually did write back in our chat and say that he had a positive meeting. They didn't just discuss healthcare; they discussed other things. But he said, I do feel like, it was a positive, not that he's willing to say, oh, yes, I'm all for it now and do a 180. That's not what he said. But he said, I definitely feel like progress was made. And for me, if I'm going to paraphrase, it was like the ice was broken. You know what I'm saying? Like that first move was very good. And so now, of course, Dave is going to be part of a group that's going to go visit Dean and with another small group of people on Saturday because it's the launch of his next campaign. I won't be there because I'm supposed to be going to the Mondale dinner with, drum roll please,
yes,
Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem Jeffries.
He's our keynote speaker. But anyway, Gina's going with me, so we're going to hold hands through the dinner. But anyway.
Supposedly, Hakeem Jeffries, I think he said somewhere that he's in favor of Medicare for All now.
He did.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if I believe that, but if he were a true ally, of Medicare for All,
I'll take it.
That would be very, very valuable, of course.
So one of the other things, and this I don't want to completely derail your conversation here, but one of the other things that Greg said was that the general consensus has been like to stay centrist, and he said now that tide is turning and it's not as fashionable to be centrist. I don't know what that looks like down the road, 6 months, a year from now, but I did find some, hope in that statement because he's got access to the higher ups in this place, and I don't have it. So the other thing that he said, which I was really, really surprised about, is that Ken Martin, who is the head of the Democratic Party in Minnesota, is absolutely for Medicare for All. And so I was shocked because Ken Martin traditionally appears to me to be a strict party man. But maybe this is turning. Maybe the tide is turning. I do not call races before they're over. I quote Yogi Berra. It ain't over till it's over. But I wanted you to know that, the atmosphere is good here. So
okay, that's good. I'm very happy to see that because during the late 70s and the early 80s, the most progressive state in the country was Minnesota.
Yep.
It was Minnesota. And I was so sorry that it started to turn conservative. But during the 1970s, I was consulting for the Farmers Home Administration for a long time. And one of the places where we went to do some studies was to Minnesota. and we also met with some of the Minnesota people here in DC, okay, in the DC area. And I developed a tremendous liking for Minnesota people during those years as a result of that experience with them.
Was that during like, the American agriculture movement?
I'm sorry. Michael Hudson has pointed out that, during the 30s, and he was born here, that it was very Trotsky-esque.
Yes, I think it was. Yes, I think it was. I think when Hubert Humphrey started off, he was pretty lefty. He changed over the years, of course, but he was a very popular lefty mayor. He was the mayor, okay, of Minneapolis. Huh?
What was Greg going to say? He was going to say something.
Yeah, we'll find out what Greg is going to say in just a minute, because I know Greg's not going to get it.
All right, I will hang up, but I just wanted you to know, and I wanted other people to know, that you don't need any more taxes for our federal spending bill, that they're already spending that money. They're already spending enough money. No change. No change. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You're a dog.
Okay, so that's that. So, Greg, what were you about to say?
Wasn't that like back during like like back in the late 70s, early 80s, like you were talking about? Wasn't that like back during the American agriculture movement?
I think the American agriculture movement was even before that. But if you go even further back, like to the 1940s, the reason why the Democratic Farmer Labor Party is called the Democratic Farmer Labor Party is because the party system, okay, in Minnesota used to be the Democratic Party and the Farmer Labor Party, okay, and the Republican Party. They had a multi-party system there. And then the Democrats merged with the Farmer Labor Party to become the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And they've kept the name ever since then, okay, the DFL Party. Okay, that's what they call it.
I didn't know the history behind that. But I do know back in like, from what my dad said, back in like the late 70s, there was the American agriculture movement where farmers from all over the country drove their tractors into Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah.
My dad was one of those farmers who drove from here in South Georgia to Washington, D.C. on a 2390 case tractor, and he even had breakfast with Jimmy Carter during all that.
Yeah, so that was in the late 70s. Right, if he had breakfast with Jimmy Carter.
I'm sure you probably saw those. I'm sure you probably saw those tractors driving all over. Since you live in that area, I'm sure you've seen tractors driving through DC.
No, I didn't see. I was living in the suburbs, so I wouldn't have gotten to see that unless I happened to be in DC on those days. But I do remember now that there was a tractor movement at that time. And that it was a big thing, okay, in D.C.
Oh, yeah, there were farmers who drove tractors all the way to D.C., and they were even camped out where the Washington Monument is.
Yeah, that's a good place to camp out.
Yeah, my dad was one of them.
It was a good thing for your dad to do, Greg.
And he wasn't nothing but 31 years around my age.
Okay, so I'm going to put in the link to the new report that's been issued. Okay, I'm going to put that into the comments here. Okay, so you can look it up. There's no paywall for reading the article, but there
That's
is
a
a
good thing.
paywall for downloading the article. Okay, I wasn't able to download it, so I've got to, set up here to read the whole thing. But anyway, this is the link to it. I'll put it in the comments.
Is that the one that Lana was just talking about that asked you about?
Mhm.
What she asked me about at first was the 2017 article.
Because I do know that back during all of that,
Okay, and Will Handler. But what I'm talking about is the brand new report uh,
ooh,
by Gaffney, Himmelstein, okay, and Will Handler. I'm not sure I have it in the right order. I think Will Handler was the second author, and Himmelstein was the third author. But
I do remember, back like I think this was like 2016, 2017. Warren Mosler did come out and say that no new taxes for Medicare for all would be required. Actually, it would be a tax cut for the middle class.
yes, as a matter of fact, he said that. What he said specifically is he thought that from a Medicare for All program, there could be savings of 50%. Okay, and I agree with him. I agreed with him back then, and I agree with him now. And I'm anticipating 50% savings. Now, to go ahead with this argument, okay, the CMS projections of where we are now with national healthcare expenditures were $4.3 trillion for 2022, I believe it was.
Yes, I actually read that off of an article here a while back.
Okay, great. So if you look at 4.3 trillion and you figure 50% savings,
That's
if we,
2.15 trillion.
if we had a Medicare for all program in 2022, we would have sent about 2.15 trillion.
And that would be $2.15 trillion back into the hands of the American public, which
Back
would
into the
be
hands of the American public, and over 10 years, 21.5 trillion back into the hands of the American public. Except it would be more than that because you have to figure on inflation. Even with Medicare for all, there's
and
going
you
to be,
also have to take into consideration population growth,
yes.
because population growth goes hand in hand with how much your healthcare expenditures would be.
Right. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking that over 10 years, the savings would probably be amount to something like 35 to 40 trillion dollars. Okay, off the current state. It's an enormous amount that would stay in the hands of people. And of course, what's been the problem with our political system for so long? That instead of the people, most people keeping their money, it's being siphoned off up to the top, and inequality is growing larger and larger each year. One of the best things you could do for inequality is to save all that money in healthcare and keep it in the hands of the American people.
Yeah, just imagine if you had to divide that 21.5 trillion amongst the current U.S. population in 2023, then that would give you an estimate on how much each person would be saving in healthcare expenditures, and that would give you a better figure on how much money would go into each individual American's pockets.
I can say something about how much would go in for each person. The average healthcare spending on a person per year is 12.5K.
Can you imagine what the average American person could do right now with $12,500 per year?
Right, but the point is that if there's a savings of half of that, each person would be saving 6.5K a year. But depending upon how the bill is structured, there are many people who would save the whole 12.5K
Mm-hmm.
because for them it would be effectively free. So that would be indeed a very, very good thing. Okay, there's something here that also has to do with the Red Berets that I know I'm going to have a tough time talking to them about. But Bernie Sanders, of course, is convinced that even though Medicare for All is a great thing and that it's a great savings of money in the long run and everything else, that to actually pass the bill, there's going to have to be new taxes. Okay, and the Red Beret group was very much originally centered around the Washington State area. And a lot of the activists in Washington State came into politics because they were Bernie supporters, strong Bernie supporters. So they tend to take whatever Bernie has to say as the gospel. And in the last version of his Medicare for All bill, what Bernie did was to suggest new taxes, okay, or new fees of various kinds that he floated as options to go along with the Medicare for All bill to pay for the supposedly increased costs. Okay, so a lot of the Red Berets are oriented towards the idea that there are going to be increased costs and there are going to have to be some new taxes. Now they'll come back and they'll say, well, for people, there's still going to be a great saving of money because the new taxes they're going to have to pay will be far less than the money that they will save, if there's a Medicare for All program. Okay, that would be true, but what's even better, okay, is if you can tell people that they're already being taxed enough to pay for Medicare for All and they won't have any additional taxes. And that's
Even George H.W. Bush, back when he was in office, said no new taxes on something. I don't remember what the context was there, but he went along with the premise that no new taxes would be needed for his spending. I don't remember the context that he was speaking of exactly, but that's what he echoed there.
Okay, let's get even more specific about things. That estimate coming out of CMS that said that we're spending $4.3 trillion. Okay, $4.3 trillion. What Gaffney and Wilhandler and Himmelstein are saying is that the federal government covers something like, I forget if they were saying 66%, 67%, or 68%. Maybe I could find out the exact figure here. Okay, it might be in the abstract. There it is, 69%. They're saying the federal government is already covering 69% of national healthcare expenditures. And that was as of 2020. So if you multiply 4.3 trillion by 0.69, the figure you get is that the federal government is already spending nearly $3 trillion per year out of the $4.3 trillion that's being spent on healthcare. Now, if we take seriously the idea that the Medicare for All program is going to save us 50%, that means it would cost, as we said before, $2.15 trillion. Well, if you take $3 trillion and you subtract,
That's $1.3 trillion annual savings.
no, it's for the federal government. Okay, if the federal government covers the whole cost, okay, of Medicare for All, the cost of the federal government is then going to be $2.15 trillion. But the federal government is already spending $2.967 trillion on the present system. So there's an enormous saving to the federal government, roughly $800 billion a year in savings off what it's spending now to shift to Medicare for All. That's what the implication of this article is.
I will take that article like after the show and post it in one of the chats in Facebook.
I will post it in one of the chats in Facebook, but as you see, I've already posted it into our chat here.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so it's there. And Robert Copeland brings up one of the worst programs, one of the worst of the Medicare programs now is the ACO REACH program. Yes, it is one of the worst programs because it allows the companies taking part in the ACO REACH program to reach a, what's it called, cost ratio or a loss ratio. Okay, it allows them to reach a loss ratio of something between 40% to 50%, whereas originally the Affordable Care Act supposedly allowed a loss ratio of only somewhere like 85%. So the ACO REACH program gets around that completely and gives these great profits to the private companies, private insurance companies that are participating in the ACO REACH program.
And one thing we also need to be looking in, and this is something I just thought about, is I'm also going to look up and see how much each state has to spend each year on Medicaid expenses and see just how much money each individual state could save by having a national Medicare for All program.
Yes.
Because the states would no longer have to cover Medicaid expenses, and that's more money into the state's budgets. And you know these Republican states are itching to cut Medicaid 100%. So it would be a win-win for everybody.
It would be a win-win for everybody, except, of course, for the insurance companies. It would be a lose-lose for the insurance companies because all their profits would be ended. And for the most part, their existence as insurers for healthcare would also be ended, except for a few areas that wouldn't be covered by the federal program. Okay, so here we are. I think we're at an end for tonight.
But one thing that people do need to look into in regards to National Medicare for All, covering everything under the sun in regards to healthcare, but is to also say just how much each individual, if you're a candidate running for office, like even if you're running for governor and all that, each governor's candidate can also say, well, if we had a National Medicare for All program, it would save that much money out of the state budgets that we could be putting toward other programs.
Yes.
Because we are no longer having to worry about covering Medicaid expenses, then we can take that money that each state spends in Medicaid programs and put that toward, like, give that money to like local government units.
Yes.
To
It's a
do more.
scandal that the National Governors Association is not one of the major lobbyists for Medicare for All.
If I were a presidential
Wonder how
candidate,
stupid they are.
if I were a presidential candidate, I would hold a special summit with the national and have all the figures of what each state budget, what they spend each year on Medicaid expenses, and say, you're kind of foolish for not supporting Medicare for All, because look at each individual state that I have on this spreadsheet right here, and what you're spending each year as a state government. That's more money that you can be putting back into your state economy. Like, why aren't you lobbying for Medicare for All? Because you're going to be saving a lot of money on the state level that you could probably allocate those state funds to local governments that really need the money.
Yes, I agree. That would be really cool. Really cool.
And I think that, and
Cool
I
thing
think
to-
that's what Robert Kennedy needs to do right now, is to be figuring out how much each state spends on Medicaid costs, and then have a meeting with the Governors Association and say, hey, why aren't you a strong proponent of Medicare for All? So that way each individual state can save money. Then that money could be allocated back to your local governments. And that would give each state budget even more budget surpluses on the state level.
Yep, I entirely agree.
Send it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, 2024, I'm too young to run for president. Maybe 28.
How old are you going to be in 2024?
33.
Too young. Yeah, too young.
Yeah,
Just by a couple of years, though, Greg.
that's why I say 28. Yeah.
Okay, Robert Copeland says, Greg, a lot of Democrats, politicians enjoy attacking Donald Trump and don't care about policy. Yeah, they somehow think they can be reelected if they just attack Donald Trump. So
Yeah, they think that's just, they think attacking Trump and the MAGA Republicans is good enough to get reelected. We see how well that's working for them. They need to quit with the character assaults on Trump and the Republicans, as horrible as they are. Just let them go and do whatever the hell they want to do, and then focus more on policy measures that's actually going to help the American public. Instead of attacking your opposition, talk about the issues that the people are faced with. That's how you get more butter on your biscuit.
I certainly agree. So Lana says, I'm libertarian enough to want to get rid of the Patriot Act. Me too.
I'm against the Restrict. I'm against the Restrict Act. Look into that bad
I'm
boy.
against the Restrict Act too. I'm against both of them, and I want to repeal the Patriot Act immediately. Back, RFK not only said he would pardon the political prisoners, but he would investigate the crimes of the people they are accusing. Steve says, we are way beyond Bernie now. That's so yesteryear. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, we need to move on from Bernie and move toward RFK Jr.
Yeah, and Robert Copeland says, Steve, I think Bernie is just a tired old man and won't challenge the status quo. I kind of feel that way too. Yeah, I think Bernie has lost his fire. And Robert says, more likely President Biden would lose the $100 trillion coin. Nah, he won't lose the $100 trillion coin because it would be minted by the Secretary of the Treasury, who would immediately send it up to the Federal Reserve for deposit. It would never even get into Biden's hands. He wouldn't be able to lose it.
Guess what I just found? I
What?
just found a whole list on how much each state government spends on annually on Medicaid expenses.
Ooh.
How much?
I'm gonna send over. Alabama is the highest that I see. You know, like all of the total spending on Medicaid is nearly 600 billion, and that's for all 50 states. That's
It's a good
in
amount.
2022. That's last year's figure. And that's something that we all need to be looking toward and and Robert Kennedy could literally be going to the National Governors Association and saying, hey, why
Yep.
aren't you lobbying for this?
That's very good. That is a very good thing to try to introduce into the Kennedy campaign. Steve Wolfbread said, Doc, they won't even need to mint a coin. They just need to move the decimal point in the computer. Well, unfortunately, they do need to mint the coin and carry it up to the Federal Reserve, who will then put the point in a vault where it will sit forever. And then the Federal Reserve will move the decimal points on the balance in the Treasury General account. I've simplified that just a little, but that's what's going to happen. The decimal point gets moved by the Federal Reserve, not by the Treasury Department.
By the way, I'm posting this link right now to the annual Medicaid expenditures into live stream comments right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. So Robert Copeland said, is President Biden even mately capable of doing a debate? If it's a serious debate, I doubt it, because I don't see how he can respond to anything surprising that's introduced by the opposition. I mean, I think this time that Trump will be able to clean his clock, but I certainly think that RFK or Marianne Williamson will be able to clean his clock.
I think RFK could.
Yeah, I think RFK could. I think RFK could easily clean his clock. And Lana says, in the general, it's against the law to refuse the debate. It is. Is there a law saying that they have to debate, Lana? I didn't remember that. And Steve Wolfman says, Robert, short answer is no. Kamala Harris couldn't even win in California back in 2020 elections, I know. And Lana
Kamala
says,
Harris couldn't even
They have
find
to debate.
water if she hit out. Kamala Harris couldn't even hit water if she fell out of a damn boat.
And Lana points out Lisa's moving. Mother-in-law died a little bit ago as well, and they were moving from Pennsylvania to Ohio. Well, they more recently decided to move from Pennsylvania to Ohio after she died, but yes. Steve says, Doc, the primaries are still a year away. By then, RFK Jr. will be running the table. You heard it here first. I didn't actually hear it here first because I think Dee and I were talking about that right at the end of the Around the World show. And we were speculating that it might be true that within a week that RFK Jr. would be up at 50% in those polls. And Biden would be outdistanced within a week. But anyway, Steve Wolfman says KRTD is leaving YouTube. Probably a stupid move, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think it's a good move. I think what you want to do is you want to add places to stream, but not actually cut out YouTube, because you do get a little bit from there, because some people are just going to approach you through there. Steve Wolfbrand says Lana and gives 4 hearts. Steve Wolfbrand says Donald Sutherland from the movie, the original hippie. Yes, that Donald Sutherland. Also, the Donald Sutherland who played the father in the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice and did a magnificent job playing Keira Knight's father in that film.
Oh my God.
Keira Knightley. Steve Wolfbrand said there was even a rock festival to support family farms back then. I left the link to the online library at Wiley for the PDF about the national healthcare expenditures that we talked about before. Lana said most.
Okay, I have to correct myself on something I just said. There is just almost all of the total Medicaid and CHIP spending is at 600, almost 650 billion. But at Medicaid expenditures is almost 600 billion.
Okay.
Right, as of last year's figures. And
okay, are those all Medicaid expenditures by the state or
per
does it
state?
include
That's
Medicaid?
that's well, with CHIP, the Child Health Insurance Program, that all that total combined is nearly 650 billion per year.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. Out of the 600 billion, how much of it is paid for by the state and how much of it is paid for by the federal government? Because remember, in the Medicaid program, for many states, the federal government.
This whole site has a really good breakdown of it that you're going to see.
Great. That's great. Okay, Lana says, Mosla said M4A would initially be a deflationary event. Yes. Would be a deflationary event because there would be a surplus. That surplus was the specifically the difference between that 2.967 trillion that I stated before and the 2.15 trillion that it would cost. So to make that up and ensure that it wouldn't be a deflationary event, the federal government would have to take the 800 some odd billion difference and spend it on something else. Maybe on, well, there are countless things that the federal government could do that would be good for people with that 850 billion. I mean, that's the size of the defense budget. That's the size of a defense budget. Just imagine if that was spent on other parts of the safety net. One of the worst programs is the ACO REACH program here in California. A lot of savings would go to help the homeless population, low-income housing. Robert Copeland says, Greg, you can run for Congress. Yeah, Greg can run for Congress. He's got a pretty great rap. He could run.
Yeah, they would hate me up in D.C. because if I'm going to vote for anybody for speaker, there will be a floor vote on Medicare for all. And if they do not vote in favor of Medicare for all, I would vote for Julian Assange for House Speaker.
There you go.
And Lana asks, is RFKJ for Medicare for all yet? I haven't heard that he is come out for it yet. But I suspect that he's going to come out for it. I mean, after all, his father and his uncle both were for Medicare for all. The Medicare for all, as an idea, was supported going back to John Kennedy. And then was picked up by Lyndon Johnson. And the only reason why we didn't have Medicare for all in 1966 was that Johnson could not get enough support for Medicare for all, and he settled on Medicare for 65 and over. That's what happened, but he was originally for Medicare for all. Of course, they didn't call it Medicare for all those days. What they call it was the government health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And Gregory Mallard leaves his link to Medicaid, which is very, very good for us all. C, and Lana said, just going by the conversation with Smirkanish, they agreed that a suit could be brought re-debate in the general, but not for the primary. And Smirkanish, yes, Lana spelled Smirkanish correctly this time. And Lana says YouTube keeps striking them. I wonder why YouTube keeps giving them strikes. I wonder why YouTube keeps giving them strikes. That's terrible.
Well, if I were to move from one platform to another, I would just trickle everything over to it slowly. That way, all of your followers can go over to the new platform and enjoy it and
Yes.
see what it's about. But just outright doing away with it at first, not the route to go. I would be trickling them over.
Yeah, I think that's what other people are doing. They're moving to 2 or 3 of the other platforms. Some of their followers are going to one of the other platforms, some are going to another platform, and it's sort of going like that. Okay, I think we're done, folks. It's 10:53. Thank you, Greg.
You're
for
welcome.
Your various contributions tonight, and thank you, Dee, for being here and for supporting us, and basically for co-hosting.
Yes, I enjoy being here. I'm just so happy Greg's here. I love when Greg, is here. I love to hear his contributions. He just has so much to say. I just love listening to him.
Yeah, I know. I love Greg's energy also.
You have to think about it this way. I'm gonna have to pick up where y'all leave off in the future.
Right. You are.
So I'm gonna be the one to carry the torch of Joe Firestone.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Greg.
That's what I'm gonna have to be doing because somebody's got to carry it on, and it might as well be me.
Yeah. I'm not going to last forever.
Nobody is.
Nobody is.
125, Joe.
Yeah, Bonnie keeps saying 125.
It would be nice if you lived to be 125 years old. That would be awesome.
Right, but only along with Bonnie.
I hope I
Yeah.
can talk by then.
Like I've always said, life is full of uncertainties. You never know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah, it's
I
right.
know. I know. And I know you know that very well, too, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, folks. Well, again, thank you, everybody, for coming.
Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Joe Firestone, Empowering Democracy. And turn on that notification bell so you do not miss out on future updates coming from Joe Firestone, Empowering Democracy. Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone. And please buy me a coffee.
Yeah, buy Joe a beer.
Okay, and if you don't buy me a coffee, then please go to my Patreon account and make a small donation there. Thank you very much.
Later, taters.
And Solana says, I don't think KRTD is closing out YT. Well, that's good. Lana says, good night, all. Robert says, my dad said getting old is no fun. Well, from our perspective, getting old is a mixed bag. There are many things in it that are no fun, like going to see doctors a lot and trying to counter this problem that's arisen or that problem has arisen. But one thing that is fun is if you're very close to your spouse and have been for many years, when you get old, you can spend all kinds of time together.
Thank you, Joey.
And that is just an immense amount of fun. Just being together all the time is all kinds of fun. And you get to do that when you're in retirement.
Yeah.
My dad used to say, getting old is not for sissies.
Yeah, getting old ain't for sissies, but if you're not a sissy, you can get a lot out of it. That's what I
Yeah.
say. Getting old ain't for sissies. I know that. Okay, I have to go and take some tests next week. I have annual tests to take to make sure that the cancer hasn't spread. And the time has come for me to take those tests again. So, of course, this is a time where my fingers are crossed.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that it's still contained and that I can go on having all the fun I'm having. So, everybody, good night.
We'll
And
see you tomorrow.
we will see you tomorrow. Dee is going on with her Around the World program tomorrow. And if she lets me, I will join her.
I am happy to have you there.
And I will also have one of my Dump the Corruption programs tomorrow. It's the last program that's going to cover the conventional Republicans. And we'll be submitting 5 conventional Republicans to the litmus test. With considerable confidence, they will all fail, the litmus test. And next week, we will start on the Freedom Caucus.
That should be interesting.
How they do. That should be interesting. We'll be dealing with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert.
Make sure we have Greg on from the Georgia, for Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right. MTG, right.
Yeah,
And
Greg would be good for that.
we got to have Greg on for that. If he'll come, he should really enjoy that. So, anyway, thanks for coming. Lana says, hope your tests go well. I hope your surgery goes well, Lana. So, we'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Yep. Folks. Good night.